Scholar activist W.B. Du Bois commented that the problem of the 20th century was the problem of the color line. We all cite that. What I want to know from the panel is when we tell our grandkids what Blackwell, Glover Blackwell, Sen, Gonzales, and LeDuc told us were the problems of the 21st century, at this moment, what is the problem now for us? Is it still the color line? How has it changed? What are the challenges we're facing?
First, on the 20th century, while I would agree to some extent with Du Bois, I would expand the sort of what the color line means. To me, the 20th century was the age when the colonial peoples of the world stood up. If anything defines the whole 20th century, it is that the people of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, who were basically resources and chattel for the European nations, stood up, gained their independence, established their identity and their place in the world. And I think the question of the 21st century, and it happens to coincide very neatly with the issue of color and race as well. Not by accident, obviously. And I think that the big question of the 21st century is how that will continue to unfold. Obviously, the world is changing rapidly. Not only have some nations in the third world stood up, they're increasingly becoming extremely important to the world, as China and India and other nations are taking their place in a much bigger way in the world stage, and I think that there are some people who are not happy about that, and that it's going to be a lot of turbulence and conflict as the process unfolds. But the great thing about history is that no one individual can control it, or no one nation can control it. You can influence it or move it in a direction for a while, but the forces of economics and history have their own way of being felt. So to me, that's the big thing of the 21st century. What will continue to happen with the battle that began to unfold in the 20th century?
That the problem of the 21st century is participation. How to be able to provide, to guarantee, to support real participation in the economic and social life of the world. That it seems that democracy is truly being challenged. Democracy is one thing when it's a lot of people who look like each other and have everything in common, figure out how to work in a democratic fashion. But when you truly have diversity, how to make sure that everybody can participate. And participation has to go way beyond voting. It means being able to impact the decisions that are going to impact your life. It's voice, participation, and ultimately the ability to become agents for change on your own behalf. And domestically, globally, this notion of participation, I think, really has the world stumped. We don't have the governance for it. We don't have the institutions for it. We don't have the mechanisms for it. And the mechanisms that we claim would stand up are failing us mightily.
You know, the decolonization process of the last century, we're kind of still waiting for that here. And as indigenous people in North America, we don't have that quite decolonized yet. But I think that, you know, that's an important element. And as I reflect on that, did you ever think about the root of the word colonization? I know you guys don't think about this probably, but I hang out with this one guy who just thinks about these things. It has the same root as the word colon. It means to digest. Right? It's the social and political and the economic and religious and scientific digestion of one culture by another. You know what, Dom? Isn't that interesting when you think about that? And that's what's happened. But that is something because we are all really colonized people, all of us. And so part of the challenge I think we face is our own decolonization and what we've accepted about the dominant culture, or about that process. You know, that still affects us. So I think about that. I think that the challenges that we face, I look beyond the human world a lot. I think that the biggest challenge we face in this millennium, the now challenge, is to figure out how to make a society which has a just set of relationships between peoples. You know, if we have two legs, or our relatives, if they have four legs or fins or paws. because it turns out we actually can't live without them, and we can't live in the society that is a society which consumes a third of the world's resources, because we actually have to, in the end, drink the water, no matter who we are. So I think that that issue, which is illustrated in the issues of globalization, the lack of access to drinking water by, so many people in the world, or food, these are the issues that I think we're going to be facing and are becoming more and more acute.
I guess I would say that the problem is color lines, that I would multiply the line, and that I see...
Not the magazine is the problem.
No, magazine's the solution. But it seems to me that there are... I think of the racial hierarchy in this country and in the world as a ladder. And so there are lines on the ladder, and they cross both other issues. They cross sexuality and gender and class and economics. But they're not always, they're not just problems, those color lines. They're also a source of strength. The problem is that we try to suppress them and control them, shape them into conventional forms that in this country at least are pretty much European forms, white forms. And so I would say the problem is that there are many lines and that we're not yet sophisticated enough at figuring out how what they all add up to and how they shape up to make change.